You want to share anything else, Mike? Or we
Yeah.
just have open chat, or it's up to whatever the group wants?
All that fun stuff that I had gathered, I assume that you were able to archive that. So if
So I will archive it. There's a file section on Facebook. I might load it. There's two Facebook groups I'm involved with, Road Trek Canada and the 7403 Vintage Road Treks. They both have file sections. At the top of the Facebook pages, you look for the button for files. You'll be able to go in there, and later today or tonight, I'll upload the brochures and spec sheets that Mike has shared with me. And I will also post the YouTube link on there if you wish to see the decibel comparisons from the old and new. Mike found a good video on that.
Thomas, did you have any more of your experience with the Onan to share? Have you adjusted it to AGM batteries or anything like that?
I went to 2 Lifeline AGMs a number of years ago. No, a number of years ago we went to 1. Got 8 years out of that.
Wow.
It was working just fine, but I wanted 2. So I got 2 6 volts, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. But I keep a charger on all the time, a little charger that's specifies for AGM. And I'm looking for another 8 or 10 years now.
Wow.
And as
So
far as the Onan, I'll just make a comment there. The biggest pain is draining the oil, trying to get the drain bolt out. Drain bolt does not line up with a hole in the casing, and I've got to, I guess, push on the generator in the access panel to get it lined up so I can get the wrench, get the socket on the drain bolt. I've threatened to try to enlarge that hole, but I haven't tried it.
Say, I've been using Mobil 1 synthetic oil for a while in the Jenny, and has anybody had any problems with that? Is that okay?
I would not know. Just no expertise on that.
I use high zinc oil. Lately, I've been using the Valvoline product, but I've also used Brad Penn. They both have high zinc, and these little small motors like high levels of zinc. It's a lubricating thing for the valves.
One thing that was said was that if the Onan runs for, I've got a 97, so it's an older vehicle, but if the Onan runs for like 10, 15 minutes, then shuts off, that it's a fuel pump issue possibly. Is that the fuel pump in the Onan? Likely?
In the Onan, yeah, it's in the Onan. I've had mine replaced.
Have you? Okay.
Yeah, they go bad after a while. Mine was, I have an 01 and it's ancient. And yeah, the guy that services mine said that they'll go bad eventually. Yeah. And the other thing, when they mentioned the new generators, they said something about it's a permanent magnet generator. Well, if it's permanent magnet, that eliminates the need for having slip rings on the rotor. So slip rings aren't an issue in the newer ones for running the generator, but running the engine is, and especially if it's gas, because the carburetors come up. Yeah, and I've replaced my carburetor twice and at $145, the last one I replaced, that gets expensive. Anyway, I'm Carl Fulnick, guys, in Pocosin, Virginia. It's nice. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate being able to ring in on you guys when you have this thing.
Carl, how many hours did you have on your fuel pump before you changed it?
I'd have to go out and look. It's sitting right outside the door. But,
About
um,
hundreds or?
no, it probably has 100 and some hours. It isn't the hours. It was the age that caused it. They just go bad. Rodney said. Yeah, there was something else. He bench checked it, put it on his bench and ran it and adjusted it, and then he put it back in. It wouldn't start. And the thing, there's something in there in that older generator that's called a spark intensifier, and that had gone bad. It had rusted and corroded. Of course, it's humid here in Virginia and damp, and I can see that happening. Yeah, and like I said before, the carburetors are expensive. So if you don't run that thing every 6 weeks or a month, why, yeah, you're in for a replacement sometimes if you're not lucky.
I see we got a special guest online too. I want to welcome Levi Kuhn. Levi's from Ohio, and some of you may remember meeting Levi on a prior session. He's a road trek dealer in Ohio. He's a colleague and friend of Darren Tosh. So when Darren was on talking about what to look for when buying a used RV, Levi was able to join us. So great to see you on here, Levi. Do you want to share some comments? Any of your experiences with generators or anything else?
Wasn't too busy this morning, so I logged in here. I caught a couple questions. Somebody asked about Mobile One. I don't think it particularly matters as long as you're using the right weight. I think is the main thing for your climate. The fuel pump stuff is not really an hour thing. They do just tend to go bad with age. And the one woman said something about running for 15 minutes. A lot of times the heat is what causes them to end up shutting down. So if it's running for 15, 20, 30 minutes, once that heat builds up in that case, that oftentimes makes that fuel pump go or shut off. Not much other than that. I did catch a whole lot of this thing here, but those were a couple questions I caught here at the end.
Okay, and I did talk to Levi about possibly coming on and doing a session, and I think your response, Levi, was, can you wait till the fall or the winter when it's not so busy?
Yeah.
So we'll look forward to seeing you on a future session.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you may give some input to this other question. I think it was Kathleen Dills that asked it. She's looking at doing something with her eave troughs on the side of the road trek for water leak control. And I don't know, the eave troughs I don't think are going to help no matter what you do there. But Kathleen, maybe you could just share a little bit about your question, and others or Levi may have some input for you.
Hey, thank you for the invitation on the question. Where I had seen some evidence of some water in the driver compartment, just over left shoulder, and assumed that it was water that was perhaps coming down through the gutters. As I checked along the packing in the driver's side gutter, there were some very, very tiny margins that appeared to allow water to flow in. And I just did a quick fix on that with some silicone. But I'd like to repack the whole gutter on the assumption that it might defend against water that might be creeping in to the interior of the RV. So my question was, is that going to help? And Doug helped with that one. His thinking is perhaps not. But is it a DIY job, or should I have a dealer or RV specialist do it? And if it is the DIY, what material would you use to pack those gutters?
It can be a DIY. It's not anything that's overly, if you're handy at all, you can do it. Basically just going to find something, screwdriver, whatever, to basically peel and scrape that original sealant out of there. Yep. We've done a few. Actually, Mike just did one this week. We typically use Dicor products. Dicor has a self-leveling and a non-leveling. In that scenario, you'd want to use the non-leveling just because you don't want it to run out. The self-leveling will actually ooze out if you get too much in there. we try not to use silicone when possible because silicone tends to dry out a little more, whereas the Dicor and the RV specific products, they stay more pliable, and because the RV is constantly moving and shifting and things are just constantly moving in there. So that's what we typically use as Dicor products. But you can
That's great,
definitely
Levi. Thanks.
do it if you're handy.
Yep, cool.
I think the other thing that I've seen posts on is there's that little piece of trim that goes all around the roof line, and there's a kind of a white plastic cap in there. And if you remove that cap, there's the screws, and I believe that's the joint between the fiberglass add-on rooftop and the metal of the roof from the van that's been cut. And in one video I watched, the water was coming in around the heads of those screws. So that might be another area that you want to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's good, Doug, because the evidence inside the van, it's just a very, very tiny area. It's probably 3 square inches where there's evidence of water having flown in. But in any case, I'll start chipping away and look for those screw heads and make sure that that's well protected. And thanks for that guidance from both.
Well, maybe you can post some photos before and after, and maybe give us a report on how you make out on the forum if you're on one of the forums.
Oh, for sure. Happy to do that.
Now, the other thing that you want to look for, and this came up in one of our prior rally sessions when Jan Steiner was presenting, and he's a former road track engineer, and he was explaining to us that a lot of times you think you've got leaks at the sides of your van or at the walls, but the leak is really at the 3 windows, because he said in the ceiling there's a layer of plywood, and he said the water can come in through the window seal, but it runs on the upper side of that plywood on an angle over to the sidewall. And he said often people think they have a leak in the wall or at the side, but it's running from one of the 3 windows across that upper ceiling plywood to the side. So he said, in his experience, a lot of that leaking is sourced at the 3 windows, but it looks like it's a sidewall leak. So that's another thing to maybe keep an eye out for.
Yeah, for sure. That's good consideration. I talked with an automotive glass team, and they had said that they've got some pressure testing tools that they use to determine whether or not the seals around those windows are secure or not. So I should probably go ahead with that as well.
Yeah, actually, I posted a video on that in the couple of the road track forums. A lot of the bigger RV dealers, and Levi, maybe you have one, I don't know, but they have a big vacuum unit or a pressurizer unit that they hook up, and they can find leaks. They spray your unit with kind of like a foam soapy solution, and they pressurize your unit. And then they just inspect all around your unit to see where the bubbles are forming.
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant.
Might be a similar unit to what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's great, Doug. Thank you.
Do you have any experience with those, Levi?
The 3 top windows?
No, with the RV dealers who have a machine that pressurizes your whole coach, and they spray the outside with a liquid soap type substance, and then they inspect it for where the bubbles are coming to find where the leak is.
I don't have any experience with that. We're not a mega dealer, so we're pretty small. I do know that a lot of the factories, they use that as some of them used to do rain tests, and now versus a rain test, they do use that method to try to find leaks before they ship them out. The 3 top windows, those are, depending on the model of unit you have, if you have 3 top up top, those are a pretty commonplace for leaks. My guys have gotten pretty good at it. They usually just a feel thing. If you push on it and that glass moves, if you watch around the inside and you're pushing on that glass or banging it with your fist a little bit, you'll be able to tell if that seal is starting to degrade or starting to separate. If that glass is moving, they probably need resealed.
Now, do you take those out and reset them, or do you just put sealant on the outside around the trim?
It depends on how bad they are. If they're just not real bad, they'll just reseal them around the outside. If they're bad, they'll completely remove them and reseal from the inside.
Do you use the Dicor for that, or do you use one of those creeping glue products that they promote?
For that, they typically are using I think a urethane that's made for glass. And it's black, so it matches kind of the tinted glass up there.
Okay, good. I see somebody's typed, Lynn, do you want to ask your question about product to seal the taillights?
Haha.
Unmuted here. Hi. Yeah, I do want to ask. I have a 2002 Popular 200, and the tail lights don't fit exactly into the body properly. It's a nightmare to get the lights out because you have to go inside, I guess, and unclip them and everything. So I'm just trying to seal them up and wondering what would be a good product to do that with.
Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Those are technically designed that way. Every single 200 we get in there, people just smear the caulk around. Those are designed to fit in there that way. There's actually a drain inside the tail light that more often that drain tube gets plugged. But if you remove the tail light, there should be a little hole in the bottom of that cavity with a tube that goes down to the ground. They're not supposed to technically be sealed. A lot of people do seal them, but it is hard because the gap is rather large.
Yes, it is. I guess the
No.
tube must be blocked then because it was putting some moisture into the bed area at the back of the van. So I think I'll just carry on and use some butyl tape or something and try and fill in the gap.
Those taillights on those earlier road treks, I've got a 2001, and the drains used to plug up all the time. And I found that the drains were, the tube that they use is awfully small. And I replaced the tubes with larger tubes, and I've not had any trouble with them plugging, except when maybe a wasp or something gets in there and builds a nest. And so, yeah, they can be a problem because that thing fills up and then it starts leaking into the inside. Yeah, I had that problem for a long time till I made that fix.
Can you stick a wire up from the bottom so you don't have to take the
I've
taillight
done
all
that.
apart?
I've done that, and to try to clear it out. Those things, they get fungus or something in them, and that sort of plugs them up too. But if they're a small diameter, why, they're easy to plug up.
Huh. Well, gives me some options.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
You have a generator question. I have a 1989 P190, which is now 32 years old, and
Wow.
I have an Onan generator, whatever that year was, and about 2 years ago, it wouldn't start. I took it to my local Onan dealer, and I think they changed the fuel pump, but I'm not sure. But now it's during the hot summer months, I waited about 2 months to start it, and now it won't start. The starter runs good, and I don't hear any firing until I let go of the start switch, and as the motor is slowing down, then I hear a couple of fires. And I'm wondering if it's just old gas in the carburetor, if there's a carburetor drain, or if I have to take the carburetor open to get the old gas out, or if that's the problem.
You may have a gummed up carburetor. Shoot. it, you never know on those things. I would, do you start the engine and run that to keep the battery voltage up when you're trying to start it? I noticed it spins the generator a lot faster if you run the vehicle engine too, because the generator is inputting to the battery in that circuit.
Yeah, well, I have my house battery and car battery. Instead of using the isolator, I just have them hooked together, and I disconnect them when I want to, like if I'm going to be in danger of starting on a long overnight stay or something. But I've been keeping it plugged in, and the voltage of the batteries is up to 14.1, so there's plenty of voltage there. Plus, I leave the starter on, so the starter's running good and fast. But I'm just think the carburetor's full of old gas, and I don't know the right way to get new gas into it.
So I had that trouble once, and what I did was I put some seafoam in the gas, and I turned that over and over, and I would maybe try it 2-3 times a day. And my objective was to try and get some of that seafoam into the carburetor. And I would say after doing that for 2 or 3 days, it finally started going. So that's something you may want to try. Also, Marcus mentioned on the bottom of the carburetor, there's something that unscrews to take it out and brush it clean. I wasn't aware of that, so maybe that's might be helpful.
That might be a way to drain the old gas out of the carburetor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try that then.
You can take the bowl off the bottom of the carb to get the gas out of the carb. And then if you wanted to, you can take the fuel line off of the carb, hold the start switch so it's cranking over. That'll initiate your fuel pump, so you pump some fresh fuel through that line before you put the line back on.
Yeah, that's tough to get.
Well,
if you can get to it.
Yeah, if I can get to that, I do have access through the service door on the generator. So the carburetor's there in the front, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll try that on it. I do have surging too. What I've done, I have a water heater, and I've got a twist timer on it. And I turn the twist timer on for 15 minutes or however long I think I'm going to run the air conditioner and the microwave, and it carries all that, and with all that load on it, it doesn't surge. But the other thing I've done is added some weight to the rod between the throttle and the regulator, or whatever the device is that keeps it going the right speed, and adding some weight to that helped a little bit. But unless I have a heavy load on it, it does surge.
Which is usually a sign of a carburetor starting to get dirty, or your governor and linkage and stuff needs adjusted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm dealing with it the way I can right now, and it's right now I just think I got old gas in there. But if there's a place on the bottom to take, if I can take the cover off of the float chamber, then I'll look to try to do that.
I'll throw out a
Okay,
comment here. Years ago, I put in a 3-way switch. I teed into the fuel line from the gas tank to the generator. And this is a 3-way switch that boats would typically have, so they can run off different gas tanks. So when I exercise, I flip a little lever, and I'm running off of a 2-gallon gas can that's got seafoam in it or stable. So every time I exercise, I'm not using gasoline out of the road truck gas tank. I'm using 100% gasoline laced with seafoam or stable. And when they come back from a trip and we've used the generator on the trip, that's the first thing I do is get that old crappy gas out of the carburetor and get some 100% gas in there. That's it.
And how do you get the crappy gas out?
Run it.
You
Run
run it.
Oh, by running it. Yeah, I do try to run it, but these are hot summer months and I went a month or two without running it, and that's when this started. So I need to be sure not do that again.
Tom, do you crawl underneath then with this tank of gas? Is your little lever, your three-way switch, is it underneath somewhere by the generator?
I have a 210 and there's a drawer for the city water. And I actually attached inside there at the back of the drawer, I put this three-way switch, and I put a barb fitting on it on the secondary side. And I just put about a 3-foot piece of fuel hose on that barb fitting and run it into a gas can that just sets by my wheel.
Okay, so you just relocated your fuel line to go through that little area then, did you?
Yeah, that's basically it. It's been so long ago, I don't remember exactly. I know I took the wheel off. I took the rubber splash guard, I guess, that's in the wheel well off so I could find and see the gas line. And of course, the hardest part was just cutting the gas line. That's a pretty permanent thing you do. But once I cut it, it was pretty straightforward then doing this brass 3-way valve. And it's typically something that's used on boats, and boat supply places have them.
I just wonder how much gunk gets in the bottom of the vehicle gas tank after 20 some years. And if that is, I mean, I know that the Onans are supposed to not draw below a quarter tank, but I just wonder if some of the stuff that ends up in your gas tank after years and years doesn't cause problems too. Is that possible?
You know, the fuel pump in the gas tank has a filter, and if the filter's intact, why generally that prevents sediment that's in the bottom of the tank from coming up. Yeah, I have a hole in the floor there in the bedroom area in mine, and I uncover it, and I just go into the top of the fuel tank, and I change my fuel pump there if I need to, and I can look down in the tank, and the tank on mine's a 2001. It was pretty darn clean. I didn't see a lot of junk in it.
And that hole in your floor is big enough to bring the pump out? No
Oh,
problem?
yeah. It's about 6 or 8 inches. And when you go cutting on the floor, though, I used a router, so I wouldn't get in there with a saw and cut the lines and the electrical lines and the fuel lines. Yeah, I was in Florida, and the fuel pump went out, and I was at my brother's house, and the Chevy dealer wouldn't talk to me because it was an RV. So I said, okay. And I figured out where the pump was on the tank, and I cut a hole in the floor, and I changed my own darn fuel pump and saved myself $1,000 or $1,500, just the cost of the fuel pump. Yeah, if you have an old one like my 200, I can give you the dimensions and everything, a picture of the floor, and you do your own access port.
Is someone said online that the holder for the table, if you take that out, you can see down in there, and that typically the fuel pump is below that hole, so the piece you cut out includes that table bracket. Was that true for you?
No, that was
No.
nowhere near it.
What model are we talking here?
It's a 2001 200, and it's on the Chevy chassis.
Yeah. So I do believe that in the Dodge, as was mentioned, the gas tank and the fuel pump are right below the table sleeve on the Dodges, I believe. So the spacing or the location may be different on the Chevs compared to the Dodge, but I've also heard the same thing as Gene just mentioned, that right below the table socket is where the fuel pump is. But I'm not sure that that hole would be big enough to get the pump out or not. But as Carl has shared, you can sure cut a bigger hole if you want to. But actually, I had my fuel pump replaced, and the key is to not have much gas in the tank. And then they just let the straps go on the tank. You got to have some with a hoist or a pit. And they just let that tank slant down at about a 45-degree angle. Then they can reach in there and get the pump out. So they don't have to totally remove the tank. They can just release the straps and let it fall down about a 45-degree angle and gain access.
Yeah, here is the, I've got it on my iPhone. I'm gonna show it to you right here. If you can see the table thing on the Chevy there where it's located, and then if you can see that, I've written the dimensions from the sides of the bed pedestals there to the hole sides. Anyway, that's where the old I put the hole. As you can see, it was a little off initially. I had to adjust, but yeah, it worked. And like I said, I save myself a bunch of bucks every time I've got to change the fuel pump.
Oh, it's very interesting. Good to see somebody who's actually done it in person.
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of stuff. I've got a macerator on mine too, and it's a portable macerator. And all I did was extend. I took that housing off that the blue hose was stored in, and I extended it out to the closer to the edge, and then I put a fitting on it, and this macerator just clicks on like the hose, and I have that mounted permanently, and I can change it if it goes bad or clogs. Just click it off and disconnect the hose thingy and the little electric fitting, and I change it out. But yeah, that worked out kind of neat. I have gotten into that fuel line, and I put a shut off on it, and I used to run the generator till it quit running, and that meant the carburetor was dry. Well, I don't think it was getting completely dry because I still had issues with the starting if I didn't run it periodically.
Okay, well, we've had a good chat with some additional information and experience and tips and tricks and whatever you want to call them. So that's great to have everybody's input, and it's wonderful that we can not only learn from the experts like Marcus and Mike, but also learn from each other and share our experiences. So any final comments or questions before we call it a day?
Well, on that last one, I have to say my experience with repairing motorcycles, that turning off the gas and then running till the engine quits does not necessarily get all the gas out, so you can still have a problem.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It works for my lawnmower, but it doesn't work for the generator.
Okay, well, we'll say we're finished for today. Lots of good information on generators, as well as another whole list of topics of interest to folks. So great to see you here. We're looking for people to present in the coming months. So if you want to present a topic, or if you can help arrange somebody to do a presentation, that would be great, because it is a lot of work to try and get people to present and get things organized and coordinated. So I can sure use your help in that regard. So thank you so much for spending your Saturday morning with us, and hopefully we'll catch up with you next month.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Doug,
Doug,
for all
for
you do.
arranging
Thank
this.
you.
Take care.
Thank you. It was great.
Great.
Thanks again, Doug.
Okay, bye for now.
Yeah,
Bye.
thanks so much.
Enjoy your travels.
Okay.
Thank you.